Today, I'm gonna compare a brand new Razer Blade 15, which is like the jewel-encrusted codpiece of gaming laptops, to a 6-year-old used jewel-encrusted codpiece of a gaming laptop, which may or may not be a bit moldy at this point. But anyway, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a physical comparison between the two, where the Blade 14 holds up surprisingly well, and then we're gonna pit them head to head in the deathmatch arena of performance death. Hey, finally got my hands on a Razer Blade 15 for a comparison video with that 6-year-old Blade. Now first off, let's open up this bad boy, which I got on a sale for the equivalent of about $1,400-ish, but they normally go for about $1,700. Let's get into this very plain box. I mean, you know, there's no point in me complaining about the plainness of this box because the 6-year-old Blade I just got in like a plastic bag. So it's definitely a step up from that. Ooh, we got some pretty beefy looking packaging here. And then here we have a Razer box with no dye in the cardboard. So that's good. That means that, you know, it's less nature hatey. Oh yeah, look at that. Isn't that a beauty? You can already see that that's a gorgeous laptop. And then there's the laptop, which is hefty. It feels like a solid ass laptop. For gamers by gamers, and then it's a little book full of random leaflets and crap. And it comes with a little cloth, which is perfect for the inevitable mess of fingerprints. In terms of power bricks, they both have this very useful bondage strap. The Razer Blade 15's power brick's pretty big and square. Although it does have this really nice braided cable that terminates in what looks like a MagSafe connector, and it's way better than the loser rubber on the old Blade 14's cable. When you compare them side by side, the Blade 15's power brick's quite a bit bigger, but it's because it's a 230 watt power brick as opposed to 150 watts. And it uses this square power connector, whereas this one uses the Mickey Mouse ears. Ooh, let's have a look at the new Blade. Actually opens very nicely, and then there we go. That is a beautiful laptop. Look at that finish. It's almost like a slate gray. You know, before I compare it to the other one, let's see if it passes the one-hand open test, which the old one, it does. There's a bit more of a resistance than you'd like, but it does work. Now, the first difference that you'll probably notice, aside from the leatherette D-brand skin on the Blade 14, is the fact that the Razer Blade 15 has significantly thinner bezels around its display, where the Blade 14 looks like a 5-year-old iPad just glued to a keyboard. The bezels on the Blade 14 are real thick. Now, one of the big reasons for the sexier bezels around the Blade 15 is the fact that it has a bigger display at 15.6 inches, whereas the Blade 14 has a 14-inch display. Now, despite this 1.6-inch difference in size, which, if you know what you're doing with it, is more than enough, physically the Blade 15 is only a little bit bigger than the Blade 14, although it also gains a little bit of extra girth over the 14. The Blade 14 is actually the 4K touchscreen version, and this is one of the most beautiful displays I've ever seen on a device. I really like the glass front for the display as well. Whereas with the Razer Blade 15, it downgrades from a 4K display to 1080p, but you get high refresh rate, and it's an IPS display that is also really beautiful and very smooth. And you also lose the glass front, which does make it feel a little bit less premium, but it's a lot less reflective, which is good. And that 1080p resolution is just so much easier for the graphics card to drive. It is a gaming laptop after all. When it comes to the keyboards, one of the biggest differences is the fact that the Blade 15 has an RGB keyboard, whereas the Blade 14 is just green. You can't really choose the color, and the keystrokes do feel a little bit different. There's also a different font on the Blade 15, which makes it look a lot more understated than the Blade 14. When it comes to the trackpads, the Blade 15's is massive. It's basically the size of a football field, but it does lose the little clicky chin buttons that the Blade 14 has, which I'm pretty sad about. I like those buttons, although they're pretty much broken on the Blade 14, so it may be a reliability issue. So all in all, the Blade 15 is a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, and a lot more square than the Blade 14. And then finally, when it comes to the I/O, the Blade 15 clearly is a step up from the Blade 14. You get some extra Thunderbolt ports, and you get a full-sized Ethernet port, which I really like to have on a laptop. Now, in terms of build quality, the Blade 14 does hold up spectacularly well compared to the Blade 15. They both have this aluminium unibody, and despite some battle scars on the Blade 14, which I actually think adds some character, it does not feel like a 6-year-old laptop. So now, let's open up these two laptops, have a look at the inside, and then discuss the specs difference between the two. As you can see when looking at the naked butts of these two laptops, they have actually fixed most of the shortcomings of the Blade 14. The RAM is no longer soldered in place, they've got some much thicker heat pipes with the heatsink, which does actually give you reduced temperatures while gaming. It still runs pretty hot and loud, but it's much better than the Blade 14, and you have an extra M.2 slot for future SSD upgradability. In terms of specs, this is where the Blade 14 really shows that it's an old laptop. As far as the CPU goes, it's got an i7-4702HQ in it, which is a 4-core 8-thread CPU, and then it's got 8 gigs of RAM, which you unfortunately can't upgrade because it's been soldered down, like I mentioned earlier. As far as the GPU goes, you've got an NVIDIA GTX 870M, and then finally a 256 gig SSD. Whereas the Blade 15 has modern hardware in it because, well, obviously it's a brand new laptop. As far as the CPU goes, you've got an i7-10750H, which is a 6-core 12-thread part. You've got 16 gigs of RAM, which you can upgrade at some point. And then the graphics card is an RTX 2060. And then finally, you've got a 512 gig SSD in there. So with that, let's turn this bad boy on and see how it runs. And we're into Windows for the first time, and I've already noticed a big problem with this laptop. It's too nice. I naturally produce cottage cheese from my hands, which means I can't use it without soiling it in like 15 seconds. So I'm going for gloves to interact with it, but now I can't use the trackpad with gloves on. Now we finally get to the part we've all been waiting for, the Performance Deathmatch Arena of Death, where we compare this OG-Sun 14 against the brand new Billie Eilish 15. She's a youth, right? But anyway, with that, let's see what 6 years of gaming performance laptop difference looks like. Now, the first thing that you probably would have noticed is that I only compared these two with 4 games. And that's because the old OG-Sun 14 actually lost graphics card driver support quite a long time ago. And that means that not many modern games work on it. In fact, not even CSGO would run for some weird reason. Battlefield 5, you only could use DirectX 11 mode, even though as far as I know, it should support DirectX 12. And yeah, just a bunch of games don't work. But when it comes to the actual performance difference between these two, for 6 years of time difference, I was kind of expecting a bit more, but on average, this Billie Eilish 15 seems to be about 3 times as fast. Now, that is a big difference, because 30 frames per second average on Battlefield 5 is unplayable at those settings. It's very stuttery on this OG-Sun 14. Whereas with the Billie Eilish 15, 90 frames per second average, you're taking advantage of that high refresh rate display that this comes with, and it feels like a decently spec'd up modern gaming desktop system. Honestly, the gaming experience on this Billie Eilish 15 is very, very good. And it's not only when it comes to the gaming experience, when it comes to just general desktop usability, the difference is massive. The OG-Sun 14 is very slow and sluggish, programs take ages to launch and games take even longer to load, whereas with the Eilish 15, everything is instant. Honestly, this is one of the snappiest Windows user experiences I've ever had, and that's comparing it to like high-end modern gaming systems. In fact, this whole thing has made me really want to make a video where I do a bit of a blind test comparison between this Billie Eilish 15 and like a modern high-end gaming system. Do sub to the channel if you want to see that, and let me know in the comment section below as well if you think that'll make a good video. The final thing performance-wise that I do want to add to consideration here while the Eilish 15 cleans Oji-san out of her teeth is the fact that these aren't like for like price-wise when it comes to the various generations of laptop. This version of the Eilish 15 is pretty much as close to a peasant edition as a Razer can be, at about $1,700 without the sale, whereas this was pretty much the cream of the crop and it was closer to $3,000 when it first came out. So it's kind of like comparing an entry-level Billie Eilish to a high-end Oji-san. And when moving away from the straight up performance difference between these two, the Oji-san 14 is also starting to look a little bit senile when it comes to software support. Because of that lack of graphics card drivers, it means that you can't use screen capture and you can't use really useful features like NVENC and stuff like that, all of which the Eilish 15 has. And the same thing goes for the more limited I/O selection. Although it's not all bad. Like I said, in the physical comparison between these two laptops, it's a lot closer there. This Oji-san 14 holds up very well build quality wise, and it still has one of the best displays that I've ever seen on a device ever. So yeah, there's that. At the end of the day, the Billie Eilish 15 is much more powerful, it's faster, just a more rounded, modern feeling device. But obviously it is. It's 6 years younger than this Oji-san 14, and I can't help but still be impressed at how well this laptop's held up. Yes, it doesn't have driver support anymore and a bunch of games don't work with it, but it's still very usable, and I think physically it's aged very well as well. Although it has collected enough oil over the last 6 years that I think it should be worried about the United States potentially invading it soon. But yeah, the distressed look is just so characterful. It kind of makes me think that Razer should introduce like a pre-distressed lineup of laptops. I know this sounds really ridiculous and a lot of you would probably hate the thought of that, but imagine buying like a tastefully worn down Blade 15 without all of the oil that still has modern relevant components in it. I think it'll be pretty badass. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of that thought. Anyway, with that, it brings me to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. I hope you had a Merry New Year and a Happy Christmas and all of that stuff. And until the next video, bye-bye.